Well, welcome everyone to the November edition of the Asheville Area Chamber's Policy on Tap event. Thank you all so much for being here. We are thankful to be in the culture room here at White Labs. If you don't know the story of White Labs, it's a really interesting one. I suggest you look it up. But it was a collaboration of us getting this project here with our economic development team at the Chamber, the City of Asheville, and of course White Labs being future thinking, because if you know what this building looked like beforehand, it was quite a revolutionary change. And it's a really cool thing to see on the south side of Asheville being built that's providing really good jobs and a cool environment. So if you've never been, please come out to White Labs and check it out. Not just a state-of-the-art science facility with the yeast that they're producing here, but also a really great kitchen and a tap room. So come check it out sometime if you can. Before I introduce our panel today, we're going to be talking about affordable housing. I assume that's why this is a packed room. As we all know, this has been a hot button issue in the Asheville market for a very long time. And we hope to hear some really good insights here today. But before I get to our expert panelists here, I would like to recognize our official sponsors, the presenting sponsor for Policy on Tap, Allen Stahl and Kilbourne. And with that, I'll bring up Derek Allen of Allen Stahl and Kilbourne and thank them for being our presenting sponsors here today.
It's great to see this many people in the room here to talk about this important project and this topic. When Corey asked us to sponsor this series, I told him I had two rules. One was that we could only do the events at places that were clients, so that worked out well. And two, I wanted to make sure that we got to pick the topics and things that were important to us. The first one was the financial impact of beer on our economy in Western North Carolina. This one it was going to be Liverpool Football Club, and he said no. And I was like, let's do why the Stones are better than the Beatles. He said no, and I was like, how about affordable housing? And he's like, boring. I was like, no, but it's important. So to have this many people show up, though, for this important topic, it's really, really, really good for us in our economy. So I can't wait to hear what you guys talk about, and thank you for what all of you do, and appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Yeah, Derek is Allen Stahl and Kilbourne. Once again, it's askbalnc.com if you need anything from them. And luckily for us, he represents about 3/4 of the breweries in town, so we have a lot of options when it comes to venues. But thanks again to Lisa and her team for hosting us. Again, my name is Corey Atkins. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy and General Counsel for the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. Joining me today on our panel is Paul D'Angelo, who is the Community Development Project Manager for the City of Asheville, Barry Bialik, who is the owner of Compact Cottages in Thirsty Monk. He also chairs the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee for the city, so he's got a really cool insight there. And then Matt Allen, who's Director of Professional Development with the Land of Sky Association of Realtors, to talk about sort of the overall market in Asheville now. But to kick us off today, I really think the City of Asheville's really had its nose to the grindstone when it comes to affordable housing. At least as I've lived in Asheville, it's been a hot topic. It's been at the forefront of a lot of their strategic planning. Of course, it was a major part of the bond that the Chamber helped get passed for the city a number of years ago, 2016. And so there's money in the works there. And so I really want to start off with Paul. What is our actual need right now in the community? What is the current need? What are the projected needs from what you've seen? And what projects do we have going on that's going to help bridge that gap from what our need is for affordable housing in this community?
So I appreciate it, and thanks so much for having me. Paul D'Angelo with the City of Asheville. So right now we, about every 2 to 2.5 years, we do what's called the Bowen Report, which is our needs assessment on where we are with affordable housing. And per the Bowen Report for the City of Asheville, it says that we're kind of like 4,000 affordable units shy. That doesn't necessarily mean we need to build 4,000 units, but what it does mean is there needs to be a shift in income versus what the actual rent is, because so many people are in houses, apartments, or some type of condominium that they're renting where they're cost burdened. So while some of that needs to be on a supply issue where we need to see more units, we also need to see a shift where the incomes produced in Asheville better align with the overall rent that individual or family is paying. And so that is the big goal out of community development, that we can better align overall housing costs with an individual or family's overall income, and we need to support policies that are able to do that. In the meantime, in the last...
Why don't you stand up, if you don't mind?
Is it better?
They're
Sure.
having a hard time hearing you.
No worries at all. So I can stand. And so, yeah, make sure we're heard by that.
So turn Kenny G off first, hang on.
There you go.
That's Coltrane.
And so when you're looking at those affordable units, we do try to do what's called an affordable housing work session with City Council about once every year. So the one that we did last January showed that over about an 18-month period, working with our policies and the subsidy needed for affordable housing, we're seeing about 473 units that we've partnered with on some level of affordable housing throughout the community, targeting different levels of area median income, AMI. And so our role at the City of Asheville is to not only partner to produce, protect, and preserve affordable housing, but also partner with all types of developers, mission-driven, tax credit, for-profit, and nonprofit developers, play to their strengths, write policies that play to their strengths to fulfill their mission, and then hopefully in those partnerships, those 473 units will be a variety of area median incomes that we're targeting, from homeless to 50 to 60% area median income to 80% of the area median income. A lot of folks have asked us about doing more than 80% AMI, which kind of goes into what's called workforce housing. We really don't use that term at the City of Asheville because there's plenty of folks under 80% AMI who are working, so they're part of our community and part of our mix. Right now, because the greatest need is below 80% AMI, our policies are really focused on those. Hopefully one day, with money and partnerships, perhaps we can go up to 100 or 120% AMI. Home ownership, we're particularly looking at raising that to make sure that that's up to 100% of the area median income. So the policies we think are working. We worked with a lot of development partners to develop policies that are simple, usable, and equated to an investment dollar, equated to a subsidy amount that we realize the partner needs. So if there's an $80,000 gap to have a unit be affordable for 20 years at 80% AMI, who's paying that difference? We look at this in our policies. We want to develop those simple, usable, equated to a dollar amount. A developer can pick up the tool. Okay, the city's going to come in at $45,000 here, so I got to cover the other $35,000. How does that work? So far, it seems to be working. This past year has been a struggle with a lot of conversations in the community, but right now, 473 units. I think our average investment's coming in at about $35,000 per unit and targeting a variety of AMIs. It's good work. We can always do better work, and that is what we always try to do, is to do better and get more units and more partners at the table to be able to understand this issue.
Paul, I know we have a lot of experts in this room, a lot of people
Yes.
who are in this space, but for those who don't know, what is 80% of AMI right now in the Asheville market?
So when you hear the term 80% or AMI, area median income, we go by HUD term, which is 100% of area median income for a family of four. Currently, that's $75,000. So the area median income for Asheville and the metro area here, Buncombe County, comes in for a family of four, 100% AMI, $75,500, I believe. So when you go down to 80%, I think 80% for a family of two comes in at $51,000, I believe, and we go by the HUD incomes there to kind of have some, we need some kind of primer there to make sure we're focusing on some data. Trust me, when we go out into some of the neighborhoods that we work with across our community, people be like, that's not the income levels in our neighborhood. We have to be really aware of that. There's some that are obviously higher, there's some that are obviously lower, but we've got to stick to something that we can go to every day, which is those HUD reports that come out once a year. And we then turn those into what we think the rents would be, to be able to have individuals and families at those levels, what that rent should be for them to afford it, and then we work backwards from there.
Okay, great. Barry, for those of you who don't know, Barry is in this space as a private developer of affordable housing, but also been in the market for a very long time, and also chairs the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee for the city. And Barry, I'm interested to hear your perspective as a private developer of those units, what that's like right now with the construction costs skyrocketing,
Sure.
with supply chain issues and all those things that comes with it, as if it wasn't a challenge before all that.
Sure.
Talk about your experience there, and then let's talk about also the work of the committee,
Sure.
you know, and the committed people, volunteers on that committee, and what y'all are doing.
Okay. So, I'll start off real quick. So, I grew up in affordable housing. I grew up in New York City. I lived in the largest affordable housing complex that's publicly funded. I went to 7 different schools in 6 years. And then once I got into stable housing, and especially like moving into adulthood, I got to really recognize what stability is about. And that, it was a huge difference, and so I started out, like, when I was 19 years old, I bought my first Fannie Mae repo. I lived in Anchorage, Alaska for $58,000. And ever since then, my real estate kind of, it's just built and built and built. But I did that thing like every 2 years, sold a house, built another one, fixed it up. So that was kind of my beginning. So now where I'm at, I founded, I'm CEO of Thirsty Monk. So, before COVID, we employed 100 people. That's 100 people who need workforce level housing. My other company is Compact Cottages. I build housing for those people who are supposed to need it. My goal in life is to have that balance. What I'm trying to do is make sure that if I'm building houses and employing people, I'm building houses for the people I'm employing that can afford it. If I can't do that, then something's wrong. So I tried to find the middle, what is it I can do to help connect that? And that's where kind of my role, at the Affordable Housing Committee came in. I volunteered for that. I've been on the committee for, I think it's a long time, maybe 7 years. And I've seen a lot. I've seen councils turnover. I've seen development, I've seen the directors turnover. I'm so sorry to see Paul leaving the city. Paul has been it's our fourth department director in about 6 years. And so it's, it's disappointing. But I've observed what the city does. I've observed, from, again, the level of employing people who need workforce housing and building it. The first house I built in town is across from New Belgium. I built a little green house. And it wasn't that many, in context, it wasn't that many years ago. Maybe it was 13 years ago. And that lot was $15,000. I built a house for a client for $68,000. And total budget all in with everything was under $100. And they still own that house. And that's kind of what our mission was in the beginning. It's like we really tried to find, we tried to find young families who needed homes. We did everything we took, everything we could to make sure that those houses were affordable. So my work on the committee has been then getting involved in the policies, and kind of where, my first introduction to the Affordable Housing Committee came when I went in front of it before I was on it and asked for a fee rebate program to be adjusted to allow the kind of homes I'm building to work, to have a rebate, because before that, what I was building wasn't even eligible, which made no sense. So I realized, with my little CEO hat on, that there's a lot of things that are absolutely no common sense in policies and cities and this, processes in the city. So my goal was what can I do to use my skills and my influence to help change that? So that's kind of where I've come from. So currently, Thirsty Monk's still around. We survived through COVID. I'm not one of Derek's clients. That's probably why I've never hosted one of these. So I guess I know if I ever want to host what I need to do. But I'm still employing people, still building lots of houses. Compact Cottages has built about 150 houses in town. And I've moved into the development world, so that means that I buy up pieces of land, I divide them smaller to make the cost basis lower, build the most affordable house we can for people, and try to get people into homes that really need them. It's hard. It's really hard. And I come at this from many approaches, and one of the biggest things that I can say, I'll talk about construction costs in a minute, but the biggest thing I say is we need help from you and you and you and you. This isn't something that right now, the subsidy level that's needed to do affordable housing for a unit, if we go to home unit, it's probably over $100,000. So what we need, and that's about right, $100,000, Paul. So I would say, the things that help, I've gone to the Realtors board and say, what if there was a Realtor designation for affordable housing? 1% of the commission goes towards it. Or what if employers worked out a down payment assistance program or a rent assistance program, $200 a month. So it's little by little, and because it's a huge number, $100,000 per unit to make it affordable. So it takes each one of us thinking innovatively in what we do for how we can contribute to that. So that's my ask and my takeaway. I ask affordable housing, seeing what stable housing did for me, and set me on a path of owning, employing people, building houses, working hard to do it. Construction costs, are nuts, and getting anything through the City of Asheville is nuts. Most of the projects I'm building, I've owned land for 5 years. So I'm building out houses now, in developments. Building a lot's different, but any building lot comes on right now, it's like throwing a steak to a pack of wolves with the builders, and the prices have gone crazy. So the only way to do it is to really move through the development. It means buying larger pieces of land, dividing them up smaller, putting more units on per acre. The zoning rules allow it. But the problem is our development rules, our other rules that go into taking a piece of land, making it buildable, are nuts. I mean, they're just nuts right now. So, if we're vocal, we're loud about it, each one of us, we can make a difference. Like when Derek was just telling me, when he goes and he's representing affordable developers, going to these city meetings, like going to a public hearing, who shows up to public hearings? Not us. Not us the ones saying, hey, we really need this in our community. The people who show up are all those people like, I don't want this in my neighborhood.
NIMBYs.
Yeah. So that, one of the biggest things that can help is people who support affordable housing developments going out and saying, we need this, because we do. Because that's the only way our city is going to grow and keep the culture, that we've worked so hard to create. That's my
Barry, on that point, and
Yeah.
I said this to our Thrive Asheville class yesterday, the same thing. It's very frustrating, and to highlight the point that you just made, even when it's not near you, show up for those projects that are doing 20% affordable housing and 80% AMI, or half of it, 6% AMI. Show up, help, because no one's going to show up and do it unless we do.
Yeah. So that's my big, so on the committee work that I do, a lot of it is, it's like we're looking at the policies that are in place. We're looking at things from for creating down payment assistance programs, which we've been trying for years. It's one of those things that just gets stalled until we've got city council people talking about, let's put a moratorium on all affordable housing stuff and look at why it's not working. It's like the thing is, the things that we've got in process, we need to try to make them work. And anything moving through the city takes years. So if there's anything that's in motion, we need to move it along, because at least it's in process. As soon as we restart, you just reset a timeline. So that's the biggest thing I've learned about city process is it takes a really long time to change it. But there's individual things citizens can do. Being loud, going to public hearings. There's actually I always call it the super secret form. There's something that it's a citizens created amendment to the UDO of the city. Anyone can fill it out, and what that does is it puts it to the priority of the stack of any of the city planning is doing. It's only been used twice. I used it once to change the cottage development for the city. The only other time it's been used is when Brother Wolf was trying to put a cat cafe downtown. That's the only two times, and then they ended up not doing the cat cafe. Anyway.
Yes.
It's called a citizen something wording amendment to the UDO. So basically, if you take the UDO, and if you say, well, if I can change 2 words in it, 3 words in it, and this could make a difference, you can suggest that, and you fill out a form. It costs $500, and it puts it to the top of the stack. It forces the city to look at it. Otherwise, it's just what the things they're looking at are kind of in their stack of review. So I've learned it's a trick, and I mean it was a lot of work. I had to walk it through the neighborhood committees. I walked it through my own committee, walked it through planning and zoning, walked it through city council, but I got it done. And that's there's enough little things and there's enough little changes that we all need to be the ones to initiate, because I guess my experience is it's not all coming from within. So we have to look at within ourselves and then look for the things that can affect the change.
Yeah, it's real citizen practitioner expertise there. So thanks, Barry.
Yeah.
I do want to move along, but I do
Yep.
have another question for y'all
Sure.
before I open it up. But I want to move to Matt. Matt is with the local Realtors Association. Matt, I know we've talked specifically about affordable. What's going on in the market overall right now? And I know that y'all recently have commissioned a study on short-term rentals. We know how hot button this issue is in our community. We're disproportionately impacted, I think, in Asheville, anybody else in the state with short-term rentals as far as percentage of rentals. What is tell us about the overall market, and let's talk about that study and what you're willing to share with us today. I know it's not 100% public yet.
Yeah, no problem at all. I definitely feel like the oddball out here, affordable housing, and I'm talking about short-term rentals, but that's okay. So let me just start by saying, as realtors, we care about home ownership, right? We also care about private property rights, which includes the right to rent your property, even on a short-term basis. So how do you balance these competing interests? It's always a struggle. What's the best way to add to our housing shortage? Is it by banning short-term rentals, or is it by pursuing numerous other options that are outlined in this excellent periodical from NAR that's on your desk or table called On Common Ground. And I don't think I'm going to get a very good chance to go through those, so I'll just refer you to the magazine. So in the midst of this discussion that is fueled often by anecdote, emotion, we thought, why don't we commission a study to actually lock down not just the economic impact of short-term rentals, which I think we can all assume is good as far as bringing money in our area, but what about housing impact? I think that's the question we really all want to know. So we got some, we were able to commission a couple of different groups. One was an economic analysis consulting firm called TXP. They did the economic impact side of this study. And then a real estate consulting firm called RCLCO did the housing impact study. And just so I don't flub this. And like Corey said, so we're currently working on a very broad consumer advocacy campaign to roll this out in a more meaningful manner. You know, we'll have a landing page, the study will be there, we'll have, you know, the big data points right there front and center. We'll hopefully have some other you know, stories from short-term rental owners as well. So that's all coming, and we hope it's going to be before the end of the year. But since Corey invited me, and you know, I thought I'd go ahead and share some of these findings with you. Year 2020, 657 million overall economic impact. Okay, so that factors in tons of stuff. Direct STR accommodation spending. Other STR direct spending on entertainment, food and beverage, retail, etc. It also factors in what these economists refer to as indirect and induced effects. So indirect, paying for cleaning services, paying for landscape artists, paying Lyft drivers. Okay, that's indirect. Induced is the money that all these folks make that's pumped back into the local economy. And that's how we arrive at that 657 million figure for 2020.
For what geographic area?
Buncombe County.
Okay.
Housing impact. Okay. Again, I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm excited to put the study up and get some more talking points to break it down. But these folks did a very detailed correlation matrix with 17 different factors that could affect the housing market. So they ran all the numbers. Population growth, interest rates, monthly housing, those all have the highest correlation to housing shortage. They found that STR-related factors negligible at best. So, you know, looking at this study and knowing that we have all these other options to pursue, it feels like that's what we should be putting our time and energy into, is our position, rather than banning short-term rentals.
What were the three things again, Matt? Say it again. Population growth.
Or was it 18 in total and 3 that you just highlighted?
I'm sorry?
Was it 18 different characteristics? you
17
said?
different factors.
17 different.
Top
Population growth, interest rates, and monthly housing units.
Where did STR land on
The lowest. It was among the lowest. I'd have to go back and look at the correlation matrix. But again, their overall conclusion was very little to none. Again, negligible at best was kind of the gist of that. So.
Is that because most of the short-term rentals are like a homestay and they wouldn't be renting that out to somebody else, or it's some bomb house that's not gonna be affordable for everybody to live in?
I think you know the latter definitely factors into it. You know, of course, we had people approach us. So I did a similar presentation at CREA recently, and someone said, you know, yeah, how can you honestly say that? And yeah, I mean, again, are there some units that might be available? Sure, but again, their findings were that is insignificant compared to all these other factors. And I'll just go back to our position being, we have so many other ways to address this, and you can see that in this magazine. You know, working on changing zoning, missing middle housing, allowing for accessory dwelling units to be put on property, adaptive reuse, down payment assistance programs. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
And is that based on the current restrictions of the rentals, STRs? I mean, if we're saying, yeah, it doesn't have an impact.
Oh, I mean, they definitely.
So what's the list of restrictions?
Interesting.
Well, I'm just curious, you know, most people who go on an Airbnb are looking for a certain type of property to rent. Is that likely to be equal to the kind of dwelling that we consider affordable housing? Unless it's a cool little compact cottage or tiny home, maybe,
Right,
but
right.
other than that,
The larger homes out in the county. Right.
Well, and just, so there was a provision, there was a bill that was out there for a while, I'm sure a lot of you know about it, that would prevent local municipalities from regulating short-term rentals, period. It was in one version of the budget. It did not make it to the conference report or the budget that the governor signed, so that is not the current law in North Carolina. And some municipalities have banned those, and so it is an interesting question. I think Charlotte brings up a great point. Is it because the types of houses that are generally Airbnb'd, or generally someone's coming in from vacation from Florida or Georgia or wherever, are they renting the houses that would typically maybe qualify for an affordable housing unit? My guess is the answer to that's no, but that's probably anecdotal, but I'm certain it has something to do with it. I do have a question though before we start getting too much into more Q&A. Paul, I'm sure the city has studied across the country, across the state, what are other towns doing? It's not unique to Asheville. We feel like we're disproportionately impacted because we all live here and see it. But we're not unique in the affordable housing need and the housing market need as it is right now. And this goes for all of you too, the markets you're in, the companies you're in, the verticals you're in. I'm sure you've seen this or studied this or been a part of conversations about what's going on across the country, across the state right now. Is anyone doing this better than us? Do we have a best practice case that we can look at and say, you're going to Boulder. Is Boulder doing something different that we're not doing here in Asheville that we could replicate? Is there anything like that?
Going, Paul?
Yeah. Secrets out too.
Press conference.
Yeah, totally. So in general, I am proud at the city that we do try to look at best practices and we try to do a lot of research. I personally think that Asheville's got one of the best things going on in North Carolina for a city of our size, and we've got the units that were down there to prove it. I think Raleigh and Charlotte have some stuff on us, but it's a purely financial aspect that they have a lot more money to put into this issue. We need to remember that. It's not cheap to live in Asheville. We need to remember that we need to continue to see funding go towards this. I think our policies, for the most part, we've done really well. We have to update the Housing Trust Fund policy. We've got to try to figure out a way to do something with down payment assistance. But overall, I think we're doing okay. A lot of states have what's called inclusionary zoning, where 20% of their units are going to be mandated of rental or home ownership, that they're going to be affordable to individuals and families, mostly at or below 80% AMI. I think we're a home rule state here. We can't do that in North Carolina. That's not a part of our law. But what Asheville did, and I'm very proud of this, is that we tried to find a way, if we can't do it legally, then how do we incentivize it? So we have that policy of 20-80-20, where if you want to give at least 20% of your units available to individuals and families at or below 80% AMI, with half of those units accepting housing choice vouchers from the housing authority that helps people and families at below 60% AMI, for a minimum of 20 years, we have a tool for you that can help meet that goal of 20-80-20, and we can help fill that subsidy, which is about $80,000 per unit. Barry's right. I think it's probably more like $100,000 per unit or higher, as Margie says, for that 20 years. And these policies should meet folks halfway. So I think we've got some good stuff going on. A couple points I just want to say, like STRs, like I've looked at, we have a draft policy about, okay, if everyone's funny about STRs, can we grant the right to STRs, short-term rentals, in exchange for some level of affordability? You want to build 80 units, 4-story building, 20 units on each floor. Can we get 20 of them affordable? And we'll give you 20 of them for STRs, and the rest could be some kind of market rate. Is there some policy we can develop? If people want to have STRs, you have to look at this as a challenge. People want to see STRs? Great. How can we use that, one, to create a policy for our need of more affordable housing? We should look at everything like that through that type of lens, because you can really develop some simple, good policies for that. Overall, we're doing okay. Wish we had inclusionary zoning. but there is a subsidy there that has to be filled. Quickly, people are like, what do you mean 80,000, 100,000? Look at it this way. If rent's $1,200, but we need it to be 800 to fit a family to be able to afford that, we're talking $400 a month times 12 months times 20 years, you come up with about $96,000. And someone's got to fill that to make sure it goes through the bank. It's able to make money for a developer. We should embrace all developers, including for-profits. They all need to be at the table. And someone's got to fill that gap. The city is meeting it halfway. We're looking for partners to help us with the other half.
Anything in y'all's markets or anything you're seeing across your industries that would be another best practice? We talked inclusionary zoning. Anything else you're seeing in other communities that are doing this really well?
I mean, personally, I've watched. I mean, I'm a proponent. I think short-term rentals are our tool to help affordability. And I study a lot out of what's going on in Portland, Oregon, that allows it. I've been in Denver, which allows it, but somewhat regulated. And I find just practical tools here. A lot of homes that I'm asked to build, a lot of my compact cottages have short-term rentals attached to them. They'll either be basement units, they'll be on the side, or they're doing them as homestays. And I feel like we have to skirt all these little weird rules, like, well, you can't have a kitchen here, but you can do this over here. And it's just like, the reality is, for a school teacher to afford a house in the city of Asheville, they need a short-term rental to be able to rent out that helps it subsidize. So it's one of those things. I think short-term rentals could really, truly help subsidize housing for those who need it the most. We floated this about 5 years ago. I think when Julie Mayfield was still on council, we floated it up. Like, what about the idea of trading off like short-term rentals for affordable? And at that time, there wasn't any appetite. So I'm glad to hear there is some, because we thought the idea of, like, right now, pretty much every house in Asheville is allowed to have an ADU, on the property. No ADUs detached are allowed to be short-term rentals or homestays. But if there was a trade-off available, I think it would be utilized.
And I will take one thing back quickly, and hopefully my voice can project here, but I will take one thing back. The one thing I think we could be doing better is, to Barry's point. So some people might be like, uh-oh, Barry's saying about all the things the city's not doing right, and I, technically representing the city. That does not bother me at all. We need to have these tough conversations, good, bad, and ugly conversations, to be able to figure out, like, what's the win that Barry needs, and what can we do at the city to create that pathway to more affordability. So it's really, really important. I think the one thing that we could do better is, our policies on affordable housing should be in alignment with our UDO, Unified Development Ordinance. So, anything that we're putting forward on affordable housing, Barry should be able to pick up that tool, or another developer, like, great, Paul and city team have figured out the subsidy needed. I'm going to take this down to development services. We love our friends at development services. They're great. But are there policies or procedures or ordinances that are in place that suddenly it's like, well, Barry can't do that. It's going to add $50,000 to his cost for his development. That's going to be another $10,000 per unit, and then suddenly the affordability goes away. Those conversations, I think, really need to happen, so that we're not competing with one another at 70 Court Plaza. How are we working together with subsidy and ordinances? And I think Barry's talking about those challenges. It's really important. He's got a great idea for affordable. Whoops, went to development services. If this is going to cost me $100,000 more to build, the affordability is out the window. I'm just going to build market rate. Last thought is, those are the calls I get from people who yell, which is all good, to say, Paul, we'd love to do affordable, but we just try to work with your folks. Not pointing fingers at DSD, they're great, but the stuff that's on the books is raising the cost of the development. And they'll say to me all the time, you wonder why you're getting more market rate $500,000 houses? Because your ordinances that path is littered much better with gold than the affordable housing. So that is a tough conversation should happen.
Yeah, and I think we need to keep having it, and I think that's why we're doing this, because at the chamber, we certainly hear from it all the time, is that let's not walk in the door with the application with money willing to invest in your community, increase your tax base, give you more units of housing, which we know we desperately need in this community. Let's not start at no. Let's start at a smart yes, and let's work together to make sure we're getting what the community wants, but not kicking you out the door with expenses behind you right off the bat. Let's work towards a good solution. I like that mentality. I hope it
Okay,
continues to be that way.
and Paul, we want a list of those things before you leave town.
So we're going a little bit over, but this is such a good conversation. I don't want to stop it yet. So I do want to take a few questions from y'all. I know you're very engaged. And I will either speak up loudly or I will repeat it before we answer it to our folks on Facebook and here. Yes, sir.
I got a question about how open the channel of communication is between Buncombe County and surrounding counties. We talk a lot about affordable housing in Buncombe County, but a lot of that's spilling over into Ava County, Henderson County, Madison County. I live in Waynesville, which is now considered West Asheville. For good or ill. For good or ill. You know, I've lived in that town 10 years, and STRs have taken away a lot of apartments in downtown Waynesville, and affordable housing is a huge deal in Waynesville right now. We have 715 units being built in Waynesville in the next year and a half, and most of which will not serve affordable housing. So I'm curious about the open channel of communication, because I look at it as we're all in this together. Waynesville is considered Metro Asheville, and so is Hendersonville, Black Mountain, Weaverville. I mean, even Weaverville, you know, and I wonder if there is that channel of communication that is you talking to the surrounding counties that are dealing with the overflow, and also maybe they can get ahead of the curve in ways that you've learned.
So, yes and no to a certain extent. When I was first hired, they sent me out on a regional tour of developers to get more interest in Asheville, to get more interest from all types of developers coming in to work at the city. My motto was, you know, the City of Asheville is open for business, and we're open for the business of affordable housing. When I went around to those communities, Johnson City, Haywood County, other surrounding, they're like, what are y'all doing in Asheville? Because your people are moving here and driving up our housing costs. In Johnson City, people, everywhere I went there to get developers, the same thing. So we do try to share knowledge about how to get ahead of this. Kathy Ball, our assistant city manager, is now up in Johnson City, and I think she's being, one of her first tasks out there is to be like, how are we gonna get ahead of this before we turn into an Asheville type area where the prices are out of control? To a certain extent, there needs to be better communication. We probably could do better. I think we could strengthen our relationship with Buncombe County for sure and figure out a way to do that. And the immediate, what we call the Asheville Regional Housing Consortium, which is Madison County, Transylvania County, and Henderson County, where we actually get HUD dollars that come into the community to help with affordable housing. I would say capacity is a total issue. We got our own plate here, like, you know, but how do we work together? I think it's a point to some people talking about adding a larger position at some point on affordable housing to not only do a local effort, but also how do you develop that into a more regional effort in working together?
I agree. I mean, it's like an invisible line. The Buncombe County line
Yeah.
is an invisible line.
Yeah.
I've lived in Waynesville 10 years.
Yep.
It's changed very fast the last couple of years.
Man, I know the realtors are talking to each other across the region. Is there anything going on there?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see, I hate to just refer back to the magazine, but you're going to see all sorts of great success stories that we love to work on and implement here in the Asheville-Buncombe area.
Is that from builders, you mean, or how?
Yeah, just, well, with city and local officials as well.
Okay.
I mean, just loosening red tape to allow for higher density, different types, again, missing middle housing. You know, Chuck Edwards had the bill that the Realtor very much were supporting, Senate Bill 349. Didn't make it, but we can work on some of those initiatives locally, at least some of them. You know, I know we're a home, you know, we're beholden to the state in some regards. But yeah.
Okay. Next question, Margie.
Well, a lot of people in the room probably don't know, but yesterday afternoon, there was a ribbon cutting for something the city and the county should be very proud of. It was the ribbon cutting for what was called Lee Walker Heights. Today it's called Maple Crested Lee Walker Heights. And it was 212 apartments affordable, that's 60% AMI and below. And these are beautiful apartments. They've got great light, they've got great walkability. They're next to the hospital, they're right on off of Biltmore Avenue. This was a crime-ridden development that was built in 1954 that has just was really terrible. And but it had a family, it had a community. There were generations of people that lived at Lee Walker Heights. And so today, some of those generations have come back to live in the new Maple Crest. And it is, I mean, 212 units is a great thing for the city. They gave $4 million, the county gave $4 million. It's run by Asheville Housing Authority and Mountain Housing Opportunities. And It took about 5 years to get it. It's a HUD project, but it is definitely something this area should be happy, and we have other opportunities right down the line. If we can do away with all the barriers, we can do the same thing to Deaverview, we can do the same thing to Pisgah View, we can build new ones. So there are great opportunities to have this happen again and again.
For those of you online, we're celebrating the opening of 212 units at Maple Crest, formerly Lee Walker Heights. That was a joint city-county HUD project. Paul, that brings up a thought in my mind. There was $25 million set aside for affordable housing in the 2016 bond I mentioned at the beginning.
Okay.
How much of that money has been spent at this point? How much is currently in use, and how much is left?
So, kind of a back of napkin, if that's good. So
Yes, sir.
$15 million of the $25 million was set aside for what we called high-impact sites. At the time, those high-impact sites were considered 319 Biltmore Avenue, Charlotte Street, and I believe Riverside Drive. Of that $15 million, about half of that is going into the 319 Biltmore site, which is right next to Maple Crest, Lee Walker Heights. It's a 5-acre site that we used to purchase that parcel, as well as make pad ready. And right now we're in negotiations with trying to move that forward to Margie's thing about trying to remove any kind of red tape. So half of the $15 million of that is spent. Of the $5 million that went to Housing Trust Fund, we've spent $4.1 million of that for local affordable housing projects. So there's 20. The remaining was $3 million in land banking. That was used for the Talbert lot to purchase, and I think we have half of that left. $1 million to support the Asheville Buncombe Community Land Trust, and $1 million for my complete failure of down payment assistance and trying to figure out this down payment assistance puzzle. So we've spent about 2/3 of the funding. We have 2 years left. We've got plans for how to spend that money, but so far so good. There should be a bond update along with the affordable housing update, hopefully that work session in January or February, but we've moved through that, doing okay with that. We need to get another bond, in my opinion, I think I could say that, to keep this money to keep flowing for affordable housing. And then we'll be able to break down how the money was spent and what it helped for the affordable units. The community wants to see what the receipts are for that.
Yeah, we'd love to see that. So thanks for that update.
Sure.
In the back there, can you please project for us?
Hi, so my question's for the last gentleman, sorry, I lost your name.
It's okay.
You said that it broke down by Buncombe County, and I'm just wondering if, because the laws are different in the city limits, as opposed to Buncombe County, how much you live in downtown, where you could have one, like, unit no fiction, to now I live in Candler, and I have 3 Airbnbs surrounding my house, and they're whole houses. So have you broken it down for the metro area versus the county where the short-term rental rules for like Airbnbs are?
Real quick, Matt, the question was, has the Realtors Association in their study looked at just Buncombe County? Have they looked more in the MSA area? This young person back here is from Candler and has some STRs built around her, so Matt, feel free.
Yeah, so TXP, the folks who did that study, pulled data from the Vacation Rental Management Association, and I do not believe they got into that minutia, but I can go back and double check. And again, we're going to roll out this very comprehensive campaign that will address all those issues, but I think they just looked at Buncombe County generally.
I want to do one more quick one. I'll be respectful of our people's time, but you'll have plenty of time to network afterwards, and obviously come up and talk to our panelists or myself if you want to after this. In the back there, please.
Thank you very much. Hildy Teagan, a recent transplant from Charleston, South Carolina, and delighted to be here in Asheville. Speaking about best practices, I wonder, Paul, if you could comment on the idea of pressure on the city to consider requirements of accepting vouchers for all conditionally zoned projects. So we have a project under contemplation, Captain 2 apartments. They're not intending to accept vouchers for any of those units. They are about 1/4 of a mile from another affordable housing project that's under contemplation. It seems like a great way to build stock really quickly of affordable housing is to require private developers to accept vouchers. My understanding is there is a backlog of folks who are eligible for vouchers who will pay full market rate to developers to live in those units. but developers, even those that are seeking conditional zoning, in other words, that don't by right have the zoning
Right.
potential for a project, it seems like that's a fair trade. If you want a special deal with the conditional zoning, you need to accept vouchers.
Sure. So for anyone who doesn't know, housing choice vouchers are usually, for the most part, issued by the Housing Authority, HACA, here in Asheville, and that is to help subsidize rent into our community. The big problem across the board with vouchers is the fact that the value of the overall voucher is usually going to be less than the market rate unit and the rent that's out there in the community. David Nash, who's the head of Housing Authority, has done an amazing job of fighting for those rent values so that they're as close to market as I've ever seen, because the importance there is to remove the financial argument from the equation. So somebody can't say, my rent's $1,200, but your voucher is only worth $700. It's just a no-brainer that probably somebody's not going to take it. We've got to get rid of that financial argument. We've done pretty good on that. And then in our policies, when people come to us for subsidy, we actually require those vouchers, 20/80/20. 10% of those, of that 20, half of the 20%, 10% have to accept housing choice vouchers. We're making headway into getting these vouchers being moved. Whether for a simple conditional zoning, we could actually require those acceptance of vouchers, I don't know if that would be allowed. That's a good question. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But I know that if they come to us for subsidy, we can in turn say, yes, we're happy to fill that subsidy gap in partnership with you. In exchange, we need to see the acceptance of housing choice vouchers.
I mean,
In straight up zoning, it's worth looking into, and I'm supposed to meet the legal attorney for a drink after this. I'll ask that question as well. I won't drink too much.
Conditional zoning is a subsidy.
It
It
is,
is a subsidy.
but
Per se, it's a subsidy.
But I'm not-
You are getting zoning that is not allowed by right.
copy that.
It is a subsidy. And so de facto, you are asking for a deal, and there needs to be a quid pro quo for getting that deal.
I'll jump in as a zoning attorney in the room.
Yeah.
And I do probably half the projects that come through.
Yeah.
And I work with Paul a lot and Sage a lot. So I don't think that would be a legal condition. I don't think that Brad would tell you it's not a legal condition. However, 4 votes is 4 votes. And so that's kind of the way that works. I will tell you that there's not a project that's coming through right now in our city that doesn't have a significant affordable housing component attached to it. It's just those projects aren't coming through. Like, they're just not coming through. Everything that you see come through is it's either going to be 20% with Luigi, which is the program he was talking about, or it's going to be 10% without those benefits, and there's different math that goes into it. But every project that's multifamily is going to have affordable housing attached to it right now. That's just the name of the game. The biggest problem, I think, and I'll put this out to you, Paul, on your way out of the city at Sage, and she knows this, is, and this addresses Garrett's point too, just left, but right now, once we found an application for multifamily in this town, to get it through to where we're moving dirt on a multifamily site, is about 14 months. In the county, it's like 3 months. And so we're like, so it's impossible, especially with cost right now, for developers to figure out how to cost a project. I mean, it's very, very difficult. And I had a talk with our folks from Thrive yesterday, who are city employees, and they get it, they understand it. And we've got to get better at getting those things through quicker. And that's just something that has to be addressed at a city level. And I think a lot of city folks here know that, but we've got to get better at that, because what's happening is, if it's easier for those things to go out there, they're going to go to Buncombe County. And I've got all the projects you could shake a stick at in Buncombe County right now, or in Woodfin, or in Waynesville, or Weaverville, or Kelly, that they're just not doing it in Asheville because it takes too long.
And conditional zoning is not always a subsidy for the builder, it's often a subsidy for the community, because those are things that you think that's outside of the box of this living and zoning are locked into. So most of the conditional zoning projects are really trying to think outside of the box and saying, let us be forward thinking. And yeah, we put some conditions on it, but it's okay for everybody to just.
Yeah, well, thanks everybody for your input. Appreciate that. Certainly continue the conversation, not just in this room, but after this in the community, and keep this up. I do want to thank our panelists for taking the time to join us here today. We only paid them with beer. We didn't pay them with anything else. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, Paul, Barry, thank you to White Labs again, Kitchen and Tap for hosting us. Thank you so much. And if you didn't catch or you couldn't hear Derek's diatribe online, I will say please contact him if you have any more questions or needs in this development area in the city. But thanks again, Alan Stahl and Kilborn, for being our presenting sponsors for this event as always. Thank you guys so much. Again, I'm Corey Atkins with the Asheville Chamber. Thank y'all for being here. Continue to network. I think we can open up some doors in here now. It's a pretty packed room, which is great. But feel free to go downstairs and grab a beer. Your tickets are good down there as well as up here. So thank y'all for being here.